Welcome back to the Seeker's Reset. My name is Robert, and I am your host on this channel. Um, I just recorded another live, and at the end I said I might talk about a topic that I'm referring to as the personal singularity. However, I've decided that I'm going to speak about that probably on Saturday or sometime early next week. Instead, the topic for this is it's a good segue into and in fact, I'll begin to preview what I mean by the personal singularity in this episode, but I won't fully dive into it. The topic instead is meeting ourselves. Like everywhere you look in spiritual, esoteric, and self-improvement, psychological literature, channels, teachings, everybody's going to talk about, quote unquote, knowing thyself or becoming your true self, your higher self, your soul, or who do you want to be? And we're going to kind of like address the generic notions that often are associated with all of those concepts and questions. But we're going to look at it a little bit differently. I think you'll be the judge of whether that's true. What I am discovering as I go through this reset in my life is that it actually is true that I don't really know myself. And you might say, like, okay, well, what's the big deal? Like, a lot of people say that. You've probably said that many times. I've said it most of my life. Like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I mean, I can't even count the amount of times that I've said that in my life, like countless. Frankly, I actually say it less today than I've ever said it in the past. And I find that very interesting because I think that on some level that means that I'm actually getting to know myself, which is pretty amazing. And yet you'd think that if this is such a golden, like a prize to know oneself, if it's like this vaunted, infamous idea of like the most important thing on a spiritual path in most traditions is to know oneself, or in many traditions, ultimately to know oneself. Well, then you think that I'd be like verging on enlightened or like some kind of optimal version of myself. But this is the difference that I want to point out. Knowing oneself is not the same as optimizing oneself. Knowing oneself is not the same as achieving things that we thought or think we want to achieve or thought we would or could achieve. Knowing oneself is not the same as being able to present a certain image. It's actually about getting to know what makes us unique, that each of us is an individual. And I'm finding that in a lot of ways, actually, it's kind of wordless right now. It's almost like I'm starting to feel like I know myself more, like a sense of like, oh, I am me. But it doesn't mean that I have a description for it. Like most of my descriptions for it are still very, like, you could call it doing based as opposed to being based, right? We've all heard that kind of distinction before. So like a lot of the descriptions I would give myself still have to do with, what I've endured and what I'm attempting to learn and who I think I might become and gifts that I might have. But still like kind of outside of the essence of me. And I'm beginning to understand that the essence of me is not so easy to describe. but it is something that I'm beginning to feel, which is pretty amazing actually for me to experience. And so why does this matter? A couple of things. When I'm going to talk about self-love in a moment, I'm going to talk about how to begin to arrive at this state of starting to really feel and know oneself. And then I'll start with the the problem that we have interfacing with the rest of the world, which the rest of the world always wants to know what we're doing. How are we doing it? Where is it leading? How can you define yourself? Give me your elevator pitch. Give me your resume. Give me your life's ambition. What's your purpose? This is a very big one, purpose. I was fixated on purpose for a long time. What's your purpose? What's your calling? Um, who do you want to be when you grow up? That's a big question we get asked in the United States, right? Like, oh, or what do you want to be when you grow up? Like these things of like becoming something that we can describe that other people will be satisfied in hearing, intrigued by, impressed by, etc. And that's largely the place in which we develop facade. We develop false identities. We develop false personalities. We develop our ego. But the truth of who we are, and I'm not the first person to say this, but I am a pretty, like, at this point, I can say I'm a relatively normal person who is having a rather incredible experience of feeling myself in a way I never have before. And knowing that the answers to all those other questions will will begin to emerge authentically from this new feeling if I continue to cultivate it. And I will, as best as I possibly can. I will. I definitely will. So, how did I begin to arrive at that? And likely, again, like I think anybody who's interested in my channel is going to be sharing in a reflective experience with me, right? So, like you may also be experiencing this, or maybe you have before and you didn't pay attention to it, or maybe you're thinking about the possibility of it, or maybe you've already experienced it and you just haven't put words to it yet. For me, it has come out of what you could call acceptance of what's going on inside of me, and a gradually increasing ability to accept what's going on inside of me. That means for a long time it meant just dealing with physical symptoms or anxiety and insomnia. And then that and by the way, there were many physical symptoms: digestive, pain in my muscles, burning sensations, stabbing sensations, inability to sit still, headaches, tightness all over the place. Acid reflux. I mean, actually, I'm not listing a lot of things, but I'm giving you a sense that there were many physical sensations and physical pains and physical ailments, and almost all of them are still there, but they are more moderate than they were in the past. And then it became more emotional, where I began to recognize mostly anger in varying forms: frustration, bitterness, resentment, rage, disgust, disdain, scorn. Like pretty extreme in a lot of those categories. Fear, shame, guilt, and others. But beginning to allow some of that to come up and to hold it in new ways and to accept that, like, I can't stop it. I have to allow these things to come up as much as possible. Otherwise, they're just going to get worse over time. They're already ravaging me. They ravaged me. And then with that also memories. And for me, it's been a lot of memories of the past, of mostly things that I've done that I'm ashamed of or feel guilty about, in relationships, in business, in friendships, in almost every area of my life. Nothing was untouched. Accepting that it's there. And you call it karma, call it sin. I'm paying my debt. Like learning to shift into, I have to feel this, either as a way of metabolizing something that I never wanted to experience, or as a way of paying a debt for things I've done to myself and others, into the environment. So there was a shift in that. And that began to open up much more space inside of me. And the symptoms begin to decline, the emotions sometimes grow, but a lot changed. And it made space for me, as I say now, to sort of get to know something different inside of me, like underneath all of that stuff. Because all of those symptoms and all of those feelings and all of those pains and all of those sensations, they're not really me. They are clouding the whole thing. They're creating they're like a cover and I know Jesus in Divine Truth calls it like just mud. It's like you're just covered in mud. You're just dirty and you need a shower, he would say. Um, and so they weren't me, but I began to really believe that they were me throughout my life. So my sense of myself became twisted up and wrapped up in all of this negative stuff, negative feelings, negative sensations, repressed emotions, and all of the guilt and shame for the things that I have done, which I didn't want to face. My sense of who I was got wrapped up in that. And it started at such an early age that I can barely remember anything other than that, which means that in reality, I have not really known myself most of my life until I started the process of allowing this stuff to leave me. I couldn't do that when I was drinking all the time. I was too numb. I couldn't do it when I was lusting after women all the time. I was too outside of myself. I couldn't do it when I was smoking cigarettes all the time. It was distracting me. I couldn't do it when I was overindulging with food. I couldn't do it when I was sitting in front of a television constantly. I couldn't do it when I was working constantly without feeling anything. I couldn't do it when I was always living to impress people. But once I began to limit and minimize all of those things, and some of them stopped completely, well, then all of this came up. And that's one of the hardest things. That's what I describe as the movement from hell to purgatory. In hell, we actually are mostly in denial. We're in pain, but we're mostly in denial. It's actually when we go into purgatory that we start to feel it all. We feel it all. And that's where, as we go through that process of feeling and releasing things, we begin to sense new things about ourselves. Who am I? My favorite analogy right now, or metaphor for this, is the butterfly in the chrysalis. Now, everybody thinks of the butterfly in the chrysalis as a metaphor for transformation. But what I really love about the butterfly in the chrysalis that not as many people emphasize is the caterpillar enters the chrysalis or spins it and then is broken down completely inside of it. But it's not like new things come in to create the butterfly. The butterfly is actually a reorganized version of the caterpillar. All of the material that made the caterpillar is used in the making of the butterfly. So you could say that when we get to know ourselves, it's a similar process, and some would call it alchemical. That everything that makes us who we are at the moment that we begin to go through this process of awakening and healing and resetting, everything that makes us who we are is going to be a part of the new us. But the container is going to be more true. It's going to be purer. Not perfect necessarily. I don't know what's possible there. But sort of like we're going to be, it's like everything that we've experienced, everything we've been, everything our lives have been about is in that chrysalis with us. And when we become butterflies, we will know ourselves in a truer way. And it will include everything that has made up who we have been. But part of what's necessary in that respect is to let go, even if just conceptually, of who we think we are and who we think we're supposed to be. Ultimately, we're going to need to let go of that on an emotional and a spiritual level. But even just to start on the level of the mind, to say, I don't know who I am, and I don't really get to decide it. I only get to go through this process and start to feel what emerges and arises. So, and I think it's actually one of the things that winds up making healing beautiful. And also it's part of what brings about the shift from burden to curiosity and enjoyment of the process. And that is that we actually don't know. We do not know exactly who we are, and that's not a bad thing. It's actually an amazing thing to engage and finally get on a path of constantly learning more about ourselves, feeling new parts of ourselves, exploring new passions, new desires, cultivating curiosity about ourselves. These, and I said I would talk about these are actually the components. These are real self-love. Self-love is not just, I love myself, oh, I care about myself. That matters. But real self-love is to treat ourselves as amazing creatures who are constantly evolving and growing and learning. Like, you're an amazing creature. And as you go through this process, and I'm an amazing creature, and as I go through this process, the horizons of what's possible for each one of us and of the ability, even just the range of our own awareness of ourselves and the horizons of the possibilities for what we might find we enjoy and what we love and what we desire and what we can accomplish and how those things can feel, that these things can become nourishing instead of feeling burdensome, like I don't know who I am and I don't know how to answer the questions of what am I going to do with my life and what is my calling and what's my vision and what's my purpose. Presumably all of that will come organically. As we make space to experience ourselves in ways that others did not give us the space to do. We weren't raised that way. We weren't given that as children or as students, maybe even as partners, husbands and wives. I don't even remember. Oh, the topic of this was who am I? So who am I becomes an unfolding that makes life alive. And I don't know what it will be like. I just know that I've gotten tastes of it that suggest that, like, getting to know myself is such a different experience than I expected. And it's required me to be reduced to almost nothing to get there. Like, there's very little on the paper that I like about my life, at least according to the math that I used to do, according to the ego that used to govern my life. There's so little that I think is good on that level. But I did an episode on what I called new path, new math. And the new math is so different and so much more alive. And I don't know exactly where it will lead. But what I do know is that I am getting to know myself. So if there's some doubt in your minds, like that you'll never get to know yourself, or it's impossible, or you don't know what it means, I think I can tell you with confidence that it's possible. Embrace yourself. Trust yourself. Commit to learning. Spark curiosity. Feel everything that you can possibly bring yourself to feel. And it will be so much less than you may think you want to or need to. Oh my gosh, I want to and need to feel so much more than I do. But I can only feel what I can feel. I do my best every day to expand that capacity. And as I do feel more of myself. And though I cannot define that easily for you yet, it's a doorway to a different reality. And more often than I have ever felt before, I feel a curiosity for what will come, what I will learn, what I will discover, what I will, in the end, begin to create as well. So I don't know who I am, but I do know that I am. I know I feel like I am. And I've never felt that before. Oh, I feel like this went pretty deep. Next episode, personal singularity. It's a good segue because I'm getting into, like, who am I? Who are you? We're getting into those questions. And one of the most profound and crazy experiences that I have and that I have had is something I'm just referring to as as personal singularity. And I have a feeling, I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that if you are resonating with the types of things that I'm talking about, you are going to love this topic. So that's what I'll do the next time. Personal singularity, as maybe it may be like one of the most core aspects of this Seeker's Reset that I'm presenting to you. Thank you for watching or listening. This is the Seeker's Reset. I'm Robert, and I will see you next time.